Hello, my name is Mr. Rogers, and you are watching the video notes for Section 1-2 in your book. Really the first part of Section 1-2. This is on writing chemical formulas or chemical equations. And so this first page, you don't have to write down. These are just our lesson objectives. So our first objective is to be able to identify parts in a chemical formula or equation. Our second part there is to describe the information displayed in a chemical formula or equation. So really be able to see it, read it, and know what it means is our big goal for today. So let's jump right into it, guys. Our first definition here is for a chemical formula. A chemical formula is a combination of element symbols that represent the elements in a compound. And so a chemical formula, you've seen this one before a million times, we have H2O. H2O tells us that there are 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom in the molecule of H2O. So instead of writing all that out, we just write the kind of shorthand, the H2O is what we put instead to kind of abbreviate, instead of saying hydrogen, 2 hydrogen atoms combined with 1 oxygen atom. It's just kind of an easier way of writing things out. So next we have the idea of a chemical equation. So now a chemical equation is a shorthand description of a chemical reaction using chemical formulas and symbols. So it's describing the entire reaction of how these elements and how these molecules interact. So it's really almost telling more of a story as to what's happening between the different chemicals. And so with this, you can see here we have H2, we have O2, and that arrow always means that's the sign the reaction's taking place. So wherever it's happening, that's when it happens, is when you see that arrow. And we have our right side over here also, and this what comes out is water. So we have a couple parts of our chemical equation. We have the reactants. The reactants are the starting materials in a chemical reaction. You see here they're on the left, so H2 and O2. Those are our reactants. That's what we start with, what's going to react. Next we have the products. Like in math, you multiply 2 things together, you get a product. So a product is the substance formed at the end of a reaction. So it's going to be on the right. So on the right-hand side here, we have our water. That is our product. It's what's formed after our chemical reaction has taken place. So those are kind of the big parts here of a chemical equation. Now, there's some other numbers and information we're going to need to know before we can really start writing these or balancing these equations, which is going to come here in a couple of days. We need to know what a subscript is. A subscript is always written to the right and below the symbol of an element. It can never be changed while balancing the equation. It tells how many atoms of the element are present. So it's in a specific ratio. If you go back up here to our water molecule, H2O, there's always 2 hydrogen and there's always 1 oxygen atom in a molecule of H2O. So that can never be changed. If we do, we change the chemical properties, and now it's something totally different. So we cannot change the subscripts. They have to stay the same. And when we're writing these, you don't see one here after the O for oxygen. We assume if you can see the elements present, you have at least 1. So it's kind of assumed it's there, even though you can't see it. So there is 1 oxygen atom. We never write that subscript for it. So the other information we need to know about is the idea of a coefficient. A coefficient is a number written full scale. It's put in front of a chemical symbol or formula. They are used when balancing a chemical equation because a subscript can never be changed. And what a coefficient does, it tells you how many molecules you have. So, again, it's always assumed if there's no coefficient out in front that it's 1. But you can always add more molecules of H2O to help balance out an equation or write an equation, which we'll talk about here in the next few days. But that coefficient is a large number. It tells you how many molecules. For example, here in our equation 2H2O, that means I have 2 H2O molecules. And we're going to take a bigger look at that right now. And for the rest of the day here, I will be off the screen, and you'll just hear me, and I'll come back and wrap things up here in a few minutes. So, what we have in this picture, you can see we have 3H2. And so now our coefficient. Our coefficient, again, is that number on the left-hand side out in front. And so our coefficient is 3. Our subscript, the number off to the right and also below the element symbol, is 2. Whoops, I jumped that a little bit. Now, the number of molecules. So the number of molecules, you get to go back and look at the coefficient. So there's 3, which means I have 3 molecules of H2. So the number of molecules is kind of equal to the coefficient number. Now, for the total number of atoms, we actually have to do a little bit of multiplying. and it's 6 atoms of hydrogen. So how did I get that 6? I multiplied with our blue. We multiplied our coefficient times our subscript. So 3 times 2 gave us our 6 atoms of hydrogen. And so what this means here, I want you to be able to know, is that if I was kind of write this out, make a model of this, there's a hydrogen atom, it's a model of one, and they always kind of bond together. So there's our other hydrogen atom. So there's our H2. I'm going to put that H2 right there. Now, but there's 3 of those. So we draw two more dumbbells there. And these would all have that chemical formula of H2. So what this information is telling me right here is that I have 3 molecules of H2 for 6 total, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 atoms. So that's what that information is telling me right there. Now, the final thing here is how to read chemical formulas. So let's have a simple one for making water. So here's a very basic formula for to combine hydrogen and oxygen to form water. And again, on this left-hand side here, these are the reactants. On the right-hand side, after the arrow, these are the product. This is, in this case, one product. So we're combining hydrogen and oxygen. And the arrow, whenever you see this arrow, that's showing the reaction is taking place. That's where the reaction happens. And what comes out, our product, is 2 H2O. So that means I have 2 H2O molecules. And I start with over here, I start with 2 H2 molecules, and I add 1 molecule of H2, and that gives me H2O. So the next few days we'll be talking about how do we actually make sure these are balanced and make sure that we have the right number of atoms before and after that arrow for our reactants and our products. And that's what's coming up in the next few days. So, 8th grade, I thank you for watching today. We'll continue on with our equations the next couple of days. Thank you for watching.